There are currently 91 weapons in Splatoon 3, and with 4 players on a team, that means that there are more than 68 million different team combinations. While some of those combos are absolutely unplayable, there's still a mind-boggling amount of choices to be made. So where do we start? When there's so many options, how do we even begin to start building a team? Of course, we do have a team structure, your classic FLC Anchor, Skirmisher, Slayer, and Support, but by my count, there are 21 weapons that can anchor, 15 skirmishers, 26 supporters, and a whopping 51 slayers. That still leaves us with over 417,000 different combinations of weapons. How do we take so many different options and boil them down into something workable? Well, comp building is such a complicated topic that I feel the easiest way to approach it is simply making one. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go step by step in my team building process and explain as we go. To begin, we need to get an idea of what you're working with. Grab the weapon pools of every player you got, simplify it down to the best 3 to 5 weapons per player and throw it on a list. You can add more, but you usually want to work with a player's top couple of weapons rather than their auxiliary. Try to keep these players sorted by which role they play as well. Now keep that list handy throughout the rest of this process. That's simple enough. So what do we have to work with here? On our hypothetical team, our backline plays Ballpoint, Nautilus, and ZF Charger, our Skirmisher plays 52, Machine, and Wiper Deco, our Slayer goes for Splash, both Tetras, and a Shot, while our support rounds it out with Reflux, C Junior, and A Nova. It's a fair selection. Now, let's see what we can make out of this. We can get started quickly if we already have an idea for a strategy or a weapon that we want to build around. Unfortunately for us, we don't really have anything like that, so we're gonna have to start elsewhere. And since we don't, this is gonna boil down to how fast we want to play. Do you want to blitz the opponents with a constant onslaught of pressure? Turtle up and ensure opponents will never get an inch, or perhaps somewhere in between? Talk to your team about how fast they want to play and take note of what the weapons you already have lend themselves to. Looking at the weapons this hypothetical team has, we have a lot of faster, more mobile weapons, so let's make this comp equally fast. And since we don't have a specific strategy in mind, let's choose a weapon that wants to play at that speed naturally and build around it. If you did have a strategy at the start, pick 1 or 2 weapons necessary for that strategy, like starting with the NZAP 85 for a cooler comp. Likewise, if you want to build around a weapon, start with that as a base. Now for this team, I think we start with the Dark Tetras. Tetras are great at moving in, distracting foes, and getting a few picks with its superior movement. However, it does lack paint, it doesn't have a great special, and it struggles with damage. It's a great weapon, and a great base, but we're gonna have to cover for those weaknesses while still adding weapons that synergize well with what the weapon wants to do. Let's start by adding in the Wiper Deco. The Wiper Deco brings in a much better displacement special through 10 missiles, along with its beacons being able to give the rest of the team a faster and safer respawn. Along with that, the Wiper Deco wants to play just as fast as the Tetras do, pairing quite well with the weapon. We're still lacking paint though, so let's add in that C Junior. It'll give us a lot of paint along with the torpedo for poking and a wave breaker to disrupt movement. We still need an anchor though, and looking at what we have, let's go with that Ballpoint. That'll mean that even the anchor can be mobile and aggressive along with the rest of the team, plus it never hurts to have an extra inkjet. Looking at this comp, that core of what the Tetras want to do is still in there. This team excels when it comes to being fast, blitzing through, and using movement to outspeed and outsmart opponents. But we still have a few weaknesses. Our best offensive weapons don't have a great kill time, and we lack a bit of range. But the biggest issue here is that C Junior. C Junior isn't the best weapon for this comp. It can't fight. Even with Wave and Torpedo, the main just isn't that great. And looking at the player's weapon pool, there isn't much better. We could use the Nova, but we'd still have a similar problem. Same with the Flux. There's gotta be another option. And there is. But here comes the hard part. Sometimes, you're just gonna have a player whose pool doesn't work with what you're trying to play. Maybe their weapons are too weak, or perhaps the weapons just don't gel with the rest of the team. That's okay, though it could do us a lot of good if we just ask them to change. It's okay to politely ask them if they could try something else. Though, a good rule of thumb is to keep whatever you ask them to play within a step of something else they already play. Someone who plays Sploosh, for example. They might love it for its fast-paced, quick kill time and ambush playstyle. Weapons like the Shot and the Splash are much better weapons but can still play similarly. In some cases, you could even suggest something like a Carbon that has a similar playstyle, even if of a different weapon class. Though, in all cases, be prepared to hear a no. Not everyone will be willing, and that's okay. If they refuse, do your best to build with what they have, or possibly go back a couple steps and start rethinking your comp with them in mind. For our comp, like I said, BatC Jr. isn't great. We're gonna need something else similar to what that player already plays, except it can cover for weaknesses and help facilitate that really fast playstyle. Looking at other weapons, I think we should try to ask that player to instead play the NZAP 85. It's fast, it covers a lot of paint, and that tactical will help facilitate our Wiper and our Tetra getting in and being protected as they blitz the opponent. Assuming they said yes, we can easily swap that out for the C Junior. Now we have something a lot better looking. And there we have it. We have a comp. We're ready to compete. Except, well, there's still some tweaks to be made. We've been building this comp in a vacuum after all. We haven't even begun to consider what other players are going to run against us. There are so many factors we then have to consider. The meta matters here, of course, though not just in what weapons are better than others. It lets you look at what's being commonly played and prepare for it. For example, we'll likely have to deal with a lot of splashes and therefore a metric ton of crabs. While we do have some ways to deal with it, it might be useful to swap out the Dark Tetra for the Light Tetra. Then we have a Zipcaster for taking out those crabs. Ballpoint and Inkjet are also extremely common, so we need a counter. Luckily, Tacticooler helps with just that. With a lack of range, it also might be hard to push in. And etc, etc, etc. There are just too many things to keep track of that it's not at all feasible to list out in this video. I recommend you keep track of the meta, both overall, what high-level players are talking about, and the patterns you see around your skill level. That way you can preemptively think about how you'll deal with those strategies. You'll never be able to counter them all, but you can at least cover for more. But that's not all, we still need to account for gear. You won't have as much control over this aspect of your team. After all, every player is going to know how they want to play better than you, so let them build for their weapon and role. There are exceptions to this rule though. Some comps, like QR, are defined by gear and therefore need to be somewhat coordinated. Other times, it's good to just talk to a player about incorporating a few gear abilities that will greatly help with a particular strategy. In our case, that 85 should be running a bit of special power up just to make those coolers last that much longer. So, we're done, right? We've optimized our comp, we've even taken a look at the meta to try to counter it. So we're good, yeah? No. Now we have to account for maps and modes. This is a little looser and less rigorous, just lightly changing things about the comp in order to better match a map or a mode. Usually, you're going to want to switch a weapon to one adjacent to it or swap an ability around in order to better fit the match. Take Barnacle and Dime for example. Zipcaster doesn't really do much with the lack of good zip points, so there, maybe you should instead take the Dark Tetras since you benefit from the auto bomb over the zip. Little things that will just help you get the most out of every single match. With that, we have our comp. Ballpoint, Wiper Deco, Light Tetras, and NZAP 85. A fast comp focused on rushing opponents down with even faster movement. Tetra and Wiper form a very mobile Slayer-Skirmisher pair that can easily dodge and misdirect foes. The 85 covers for the lack of paint and farms a special that greatly improves the team's ability to blitz. Ballpoint is a very mobile anchor, allowing the team to quickly move forward and reposition, along with the Inkjet allowing it a way to push its team in. Now to the final phase, testing. Play matches with this comp over and over and over again. Try it in open, in scrims, in tournaments, everywhere you can. Not only does it help you familiarize yourself with the comp, but you'll notice things that you didn't before. Start tweaking it. Swap out weapons for others that cover weaknesses you find. Try different ways for players to play off of each other. It's going to be a long process, and your comp will never be perfect. But through a lot of work, you'll be able to come all the closer.